higher education system, that it is, I think it may be as competitive an industry as any exists in our country. The competition for students, the competition for funding, the competition for facilities, the competition for faculty is just alive, vigorous, and impressive. And it, you know, in this country, we sort of automatically assign a value to good competition. And I think that's a perfectly sensible axiom to live by. And so higher education in our country, I think, is at a very high level. And I don't think there's any serious doubt, and just look in the world around, that for a countrywide education system, higher education in this country is as good as it gets. Public education is infected with other characteristics. And one of them is that teaching is not high quality. The performance, the impact of teachers, the performance of teachers is less than what is possible. And it's, and I'm in the very argumentative area here, so, and we're not going to have that debate, and I apologize for having just one side of it laying on some of you who I'm sure will disagree with me violently, but the fact is, from my point of view, that we need to create a situation in which teacher motivation is alive and well every morning when they get up to go to work. So there has to be some, the way this country works is that we do that through the compensation system. And then there isn't any doubt that, in my, I'm being very argumentative. I don't have any doubt that we need to have that characteristic become a part of the public teaching, and not have it be a situation where there's really no threat, there's no motivation to get better at it. It's also true that we have very low expectations of our education system, and I think it's very clear that if we set our expectations higher, we would perform at a higher level. And we need, hold your hat, we need national standards here. We need to have an understanding of where kids in the 4th grade should be in terms of the arithmetic they're doing and in terms of their reading ability, and, you know, an array of things that should happen by the 4th. So we have standards, we know, and we teach to those standards, and all the way on through high school. And finally, we at the foundation believe that the standard, the overall standard, should be to have children graduate from high school in our country ready for college, qualified to go to college. Not that, recognize perfectly well that there aren't enough colleges, maybe never will be, for everybody to go to college, but then you go on and say, or a high quality of work. And those are really tough reforms that we're talking about, but it's fundamental, and it's really important. And I think I've already disclosed my basic optimism. I think there are things happening in this country that are positive movements in that direction. One of the most exciting things is the school district in the place where it should be the best, the United States Capitol, is perhaps the worst metropolitan school district in the world. They have a new mayor who was a couple of years ago, who was elected on the platform of fixing the Washington, D.C. school system. And he was elected by a majority in every precinct in the city. And he got in and he completely turned the school thing upside down, hired a 36-year-old Korean woman from
Michelle Rhee.
Michelle Rhee, R-H-E-E, who has just turned the thing completely upside down. And it may provide a wonderful example of what is possible for people who really, I mean, it was a disaster. You know, it really was. I think their graduation rate was something lower than 50%. I mean, it was just worse than the rest of the country, which is somewhere in the neighborhood of 40% of kids who start high school don't finish, at least in urban schools. So anyway.
You spoke about you know, the importance of going to university, and as I mentioned, you and my father have one thing in common, and as you both went through university on the GI Bill. We're facing a situation today where we have more you know, returning veterans than we've had probably since the Vietnam War. Does our nation need a GI Bill today for our veterans from Iraq and Afghanistan?
Well, sure. I think that makes all kinds of sense. I mean, and it's, of course, it's just a fair thing to do with people who've been in the service, and it makes all kinds of sense. And it did in my generation. It sent people to college who otherwise would not have gone. There isn't any question about that. Now, the thing that gets kind of overlooked in this discussion of what is good public policy is the fact that the United States government is a major contributor to college education, because there's a thing called Pell Grants, which were basically, and you have to qualify for them, and you have to be poor enough. It was around the $500, and now, just, you know, very recently, with all the new things going on in Washington, D.C., Pell Grants have gone up to $950, which are, you know, that's a really significant impact on a tuition plan and on a go-to-college budget. And so there are good things happening in that direction. Mm-hmm. And there's recognition that, you know, we have this ideal for a country in which everybody's opportunity is the same as the next guy's.
Yeah.
And that's a simple but bloody complicated thing to accomplish. And with kids who grow up in circumstances where they don't have the kind of encouragement, the kind of lesson giving that our families do, our children do, we did, maybe not all of us, but anyway, and it isn't their fault. I mean, you know, it's something that happened to them through no choice or opportunity of their own. And we, in order to create a situation in which you somehow cover that gap for those urban children of poor families, we aren't living up to the promise of this nation. So that's something we got to do.
It's right there on your foundation's homepage, right? All lives are equal. You talk a lot about that in your book, about reaching everywhere, and I mean, doing things in your neighborhood, but saying you got to reach out everywhere where a kid doesn't have opportunity. Other than some of the names you've mentioned, who are your heroes? Who are your heroes?
Say again.
Who are your heroes?
Who are my heroes?
Yes. Who did you grow up admiring?
Oh boy,
who have you come to admire?
I had some teachers that were heroes, heroines. Warren Buffett is a hero of mine. Bright but simple, straightforward reasoning about things, and a sense of good humor about the whole thing too, which is really magic. There's just a whole array of them. We've had some presidents who I think are spectacular. And
which ones?
People that we admire. And, you know, the president of the university in Seattle, a fellow by the name of Mark Emmert, he's just so competent and so good at what he does. It's a wonder. The world is full of really accomplished people who are really making an excessive contribution as against